The champagne was still fizzing in my glass when my wife told a room full of strangers that she'd been sleeping with my business partner. She stood up at our anniversary dinner, clinked her fork against crystal, and delivered the speech that ended my marriage. 43 people watched. I didn't flinch. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 44 years old, and 3 years ago I was the co-founder of Ridgeline Architecture, a firm that designed high-end residential properties across the Pacific Northwest. We had offices in Portland and Seattle, a team of 26, and a client list that included tech executives, retired athletes, and old money families who wanted something bold built on cliff sides. My partner was a man named Craig Heller. We'd met in grad school at the University of Oregon. He was the schmoozer. I was the one who could actually draw. Together, we built something real, or I thought we did. My wife, Natasha, came from St. Petersburg. Not the one in Florida, Russia. She'd been in the States on an H-1B visa working for an interior design firm in Seattle when we met at a trade show 11 years ago. She had this way of commanding a room without raising her voice. Sharp, elegant, bilingual in a way that made clients feel cultured just for hiring us. We married after 2 years of dating. Her visa shifted to a green card through our marriage, but she'd never pursued citizenship. Said she didn't see the point when the card worked fine. She had a son from her first marriage. Alexei. Goes by Alex. He was 6 when I came into his life. His biological father, some guy named Dmitri who'd gone back to Moscow before Alex could form a memory of him, sent child support checks that bounced more often than they cleared. I didn't adopt Alex officially. Natasha never wanted that. But I was the one who drove him to soccer practice, helped him with geometry, built him a desk for his bedroom when he said he wanted to start drawing like me. He was 15 when everything collapsed. The anniversary dinner was my idea. 10 years of marriage. I'd reserved the private dining room at Whitfield's in downtown Portland. Cedar walls, floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the Willamette River. I'd invited close friends, a few colleagues, Craig and his wife Deborah. My mother flew in from Tucson. Natasha's sister Irina came down from Vancouver. It was supposed to be an evening about gratitude, about building a decade of something meaningful. Natasha wore the sapphire necklace I'd given her for our 5th anniversary. Hair pinned up, navy dress, that half smile she used when she wanted people to lean in closer. She waited until the main course was served, until everyone had their wine topped off, until the room was warm and comfortable. Then she stood. "I'd like to say something," she announced, and the way her voice landed made every conversation stop mid-sentence. I looked up from my plate, expecting some kind of toast, maybe even a joke about surviving a decade with an architect who never stopped sketching on napkins. But her eyes weren't on me. They were scanning the room, landing everywhere except where I sat. "I've spent the last 10 years pretending," she said. "Pretending I was happy in a marriage that stopped growing years ago. Pretending I didn't deserve passion and honesty. 6 months ago, I found both. His name is Craig. And I'm not going to hide it anymore." The silence that followed was physical. It pressed against my eardrums. I watched Craig's wife Deborah turn white. Watched Craig stare at his plate like it contained instructions for surviving this moment. Watched my mother's hand go to her chest. 43 people in that room, and not one of them breathed. Natasha kept talking. Something about authenticity, about refusing to live small, about how Craig understood parts of her that I never tried to reach. She used phrases that sounded rehearsed, polished, like she'd practiced them in front of a mirror. Growth. Self-actualization. Living in alignment with her truth. I sat through all of it. Didn't interrupt, didn't slam my fist on the table, didn't storm out halfway through. I listened to every word because I needed to know exactly who I was dealing with. When she finished, the room stayed frozen. Someone's phone buzzed. A waiter near the door looked like he wanted to evaporate. I wiped my mouth with my napkin, folded it neatly, placed it beside my plate. Then I flagged down the server. "I'll take care of my tab separately," I said. My voice was steady, quiet, the tone I used when presenting to skeptical clients. I signed the receipt, left a 40% tip because none of this was the staff's fault, and stood up. "Daniel," Natasha said, and for the first time that evening, her voice cracked. "Can we talk about this?" I looked at her. Not with anger, not with pain, just with the kind of clarity that comes when you finally see someone for exactly who they are. "You just did," I said. Then I walked out. In the parking garage, I sat in my truck for 90 seconds. Counted them. Then I drove to a storage facility on Powell Boulevard that I'd rented 9 months ago under the name David Merritt. The unit was climate-controlled, paid for with cash from freelance consulting work I'd done on the side, income Natasha never knew existed because she never asked about anything that didn't involve her name. I'd started preparing the day I found the texts. 9 months earlier, I'd picked up Natasha's iPad to check a recipe she'd bookmarked, and her messages synced. The conversation with Craig went back 4 months before that, explicit, detailed, and completely unmistakable. They'd been meeting at a boutique hotel in the Pearl District every Thursday afternoon while I was on client calls and Alex was at school. I didn't confront her. Didn't confront Craig. I called my attorney, a woman named Rachel Okafor, who I'd known since she handled the legal work for our first major project. I told her everything. She told me to gather evidence quietly and prepare for the worst. So I did. The storage unit held a packed suitcase, a laptop loaded with encrypted copies of every financial document I'd need, $14,000 in cash, a prepaid phone, and the keys to a 12-year-old Subaru Outback I'd bought from a private seller in Gresham. Registered to David Merritt. The car looked like it belonged to a high school teacher, not an architect. That was the point. I changed clothes in the unit, left my sport coat hanging on a hook, drove the Subaru north on I-5, stopped at a gas station outside Olympia, and called Rachel from the prepaid phone. She answered immediately, despite it being nearly midnight. Go ahead. File everything tomorrow morning, I said. The partnership dissolution, the divorce petition, all of it. Rachel didn't hesitate. Already drafted. I've been waiting for this call for 3 months. One thing, Daniel. The prenuptial agreement. I know. We'd signed a prenup before the wedding. Natasha had insisted on having her own attorney review it, a guy named Victor Petrov in Seattle. The agreement was clear. In the event of proven infidelity by either party, the offending spouse forfeits all claims to marital property acquired during the marriage, including equity in jointly held businesses. Natasha had signed it without complaint. She'd told me at the time that she'd never give me a reason to invoke it. I believed her then. What about her immigration status? I asked Rachel. Rachel paused. Her green card is conditional on the marriage. If the divorce goes through based on infidelity and she can't demonstrate independent grounds for permanent residency, USCIS will review her status. She could face removal proceedings. I stared through the windshield at the empty highway. How long? Could take months. Could take over a year. Immigration moves slow. But the clock starts when the divorce is finalized. And Alex? He's a minor with residency through his mother. If she loses status and leaves, he'd need a legal guardian in the U.S. His biological father could petition for custody if he's reachable, or other arrangements would need to be made. Rachel's voice softened. That part's not your legal problem, Daniel. But I know it's your emotional one. Yeah, I said. It is. I drove until I reached a rental cabin on the Olympic Peninsula that I'd booked for a month under David Merritt. Cash payment, no questions asked. The cabin sat at the end of a gravel road, surrounded by Douglas firs so tall they blocked out the stars. The only sound was rain against the roof, and somewhere far off, the ocean. I didn't sleep that first night. Sat in a wooden chair by the window and thought about Alex. That kid had already lost one father figure before he could tie his shoes. Now he was losing another. Not because I wanted to leave him, but because staying meant accepting that the two people closest to me had conspired to humiliate me in the most public way possible. Staying meant becoming the man who swallows poison and calls it medicine. I pulled out the prepaid phone and typed a message to Alex's number. Didn't send it, deleted it, typed it again. Deleted it again. Some things you can't say in a text because the words aren't built to carry that much weight. Rachel called at 7 the next morning. Documents filed. Natasha was served at the house an hour ago. She's been calling your old number. It's off, obviously. But she also called the office. What happened at the office? Craig wasn't there. Hasn't shown up. Deborah apparently threw him out last night. He's staying at the Ace Hotel downtown. Your staff is confused. I told them you're taking a leave of absence for personal reasons, and that all business matters should be directed to me. Good, I said. What about the accounts? Frozen as of this morning. Joint checking, joint savings, the shared brokerage account. Everything the prenup covers is locked pending the proceedings. She has access to her personal account only, which has about $11,000 in it. I did the math. $11,000 wouldn't last long in Portland. Not with the mortgage on the house, which was in my name. Not with Alex's school expenses. Not with the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to. She's going to panic, I said. She already is, Rachel replied. Her attorney, some guy I've never heard of, already sent a demand letter claiming the prenup was signed under duress and should be voided. I sent back copies of the independent counsel records, the notarized acknowledgments, the video deposition from the signing. They've got nothing. I spent the next 2 weeks in that cabin doing something I hadn't done in years. Nothing. I hiked. Cooked simple meals. Read books that had been collecting dust on a shelf in my office for a decade. I started sketching again, not buildings, just the trees, the coastline, the way light hit water at different times of day. Somewhere in that silence, I remembered why I'd wanted to be an architect in the first place. Not for the money or the client dinners, but for the act of creating something from nothing. Rachel sent updates like dispatches from a distant war. Day 4, Natasha posted a video on her social media. Soft focus, sitting in the living room of our house, candles lit behind her. She talked about vulnerability, about choosing love over obligation, about the courage it takes to follow your heart. She never used the word affair. Called it a connection. Called Craig her catalyst. The comments were split. Half her followers cheered her on, called her brave. The other half tore her apart. One comment had 200 likes. You announced your affair at your husband's anniversary dinner and you're calling yourself brave? That's not courage. That's cruelty in a pretty dress. Day 7, Craig tried to contact me. Sent an email to my firm address, which Rachel intercepted. The email was long, rambling, full of justifications. It wasn't planned. It just happened. You and I can still save the business. I respect you too much to let this destroy everything we built. Rachel forwarded it to me with a single note. Want me to respond? I wrote back, one word. No. Day 10, Natasha discovered the prenup was airtight. Her attorney withdrew the duress claim. She hired a new lawyer, a more expensive one, who tried a different angle. Claimed the infidelity clause was unconscionable and shouldn't be enforced in a modern court. Rachel dismantled that argument in a 4-page response that referenced 6 precedent cases. The new lawyer went quiet for a week. Day 14. Natasha tried to use Alex. She posted a photo of him on Instagram, sitting at the kitchen table looking somber, with the caption, "A child shouldn't pay for adult mistakes. If you agree, share this." That post got her more attention than anything she'd published in months. But the attention wasn't sympathetic. People called her manipulative. Using your kid as a prop to win public sympathy is disgusting. She deleted it within hours, but screenshots lived forever. Day 18, I got a message on an old Steam account I'd forgotten existed. Alex and I used to play a city-building game together on weekend mornings. His username popped up with a simple message. Are you there? I stared at the screen. The kid had found the one channel his mother didn't monitor, didn't even know about. I typed back. I'm here, buddy. His response came fast. Mom's a mess. She cries all day. Craig moved into the guest room. I can hear them arguing at night. My chest tightened. I'm sorry you're going through this. She says you're trying to destroy her. That you froze the money to punish her. I chose my words carefully. I'm protecting what's mine legally. I didn't create this situation. She knows that. Yeah. Alex wrote. I know. Then, after a pause. I miss working on the desk. We'd built it together over a weekend. Measured and cut the wood in the garage, sanded it smooth, stained it a warm walnut color. He'd been so proud of it. I miss that too, I typed. How's school? Fine. I got into the honors art program. That's amazing, Alex. I meant it. Mom doesn't care. She's too busy making videos about her journey. He added a rolling eyes emoji. The trust she shows in me is the same trust she broke, he typed. Then, just for your information, I'm not stupid. I know what she did. I've known for a while. I sat with that for a long time. A 15-year-old carrying the weight of his mother's choices, seeing through the performance she put on for the internet, and somehow still standing. You're stronger than you know, I wrote. His last message before logging off was 4 words. She doesn't deserve you. Rachel called the next morning with an update I'd been expecting. Immigration is starting to look at her status. The green card review is triggered automatically when a marriage-based petition is dissolved under fraud or fault grounds. She's got maybe 6 months before they schedule an interview. What are her options? Employer-sponsored visa if she can find someone willing. Student visa if she enrolls somewhere. Or she goes back to Russia. But Russia's complicated right now. She might try Canada. Her sister's in Vancouver. And Alex? Rachel sighed. If Natasha leaves the country, Alex's custody gets murky. His biological father hasn't been in the picture for over a decade. Natasha could take him with her, or she could try to arrange guardianship with someone here. But Daniel, none of this is your legal responsibility. I know, I said. But set up an education fund for him anyway. Separate from everything else. Something she can't touch. How much? Enough for 4 years of college plus living expenses. Pull it from the consulting LLC. Rachel was quiet for a moment. You're a good man, Daniel. I'm a man who keeps his promises, I said. I told that kid I'd make sure he had options. That doesn't change because his mother blew up our lives. 3 months after I left, the divorce was finalized. Natasha got nothing from the marital estate beyond her personal belongings and $11,000 in her private account. The house was sold. Craig bought out my share of the firm at a valuation Rachel negotiated that was generous to me and punishing to him. He could have the business. I didn't want to build anything with a man who'd spent months building something with my wife in a hotel room. I took the buyout money, combined it with savings, and bought 40 acres on the Oregon coast near a town called Bandon. Population 3,000. 1 grocery store, 2 diners, a library that smelled like salt air and old paper. I built a workshop first, then slowly, over months, a house. Did most of it myself with help from a retired contractor named Walt who lived down the road and seemed to understand that I needed the work more than I needed the conversation. I started making furniture. Tables, chairs, bookshelves. Used reclaimed wood from old barns and beach timber. Turned out I was better at building things people could touch than things people could only look at. A shop in town started selling my pieces. Then a gallery in Ashland. Then one in Bend. Nothing made me rich, but everything made me feel like I was earning my life instead of just occupying it. Natasha got deported 14 months after the divorce. She tried everything. Applied for jobs that would sponsor a visa, but no one was willing to take on the immigration paperwork for an interior designer with a public scandal attached to her name. Tried to enroll in a graduate program at Portland State, but the tuition was beyond what she could afford without access to our former accounts. In the end, she flew to Vancouver to stay with Irina. Not Russia, but not America either. Craig and Deborah divorced 6 months after we did. He kept the firm but lost most of his senior staff. Turns out people don't love working for a man who slept with his partner's wife and then tried to pretend it was a mutual awakening. Last I heard, he downsized to a 3-person operation working on kitchen remodels. Karma doesn't always arrive in a thunderclap. Sometimes it just quietly downsizes your dreams. Alex stayed in the States. His biological father, Dmitry, had remarried and was living in Chicago. He petitioned for custody more out of obligation than affection, but it gave Alex legal standing to remain. The kid moved to the Midwest, enrolled in a new school, kept drawing. We stayed in touch through that Steam account, then eventually through regular texts once he got a phone his mother didn't control. I changed my last name. Not dramatically. Mercer became Merritt, the name I'd already been using. Got a new driver's license, updated my records, let Daniel Mercer fade into someone who used to exist. Not hiding exactly, just shedding a skin that didn't fit anymore. 3 years after the anniversary dinner, a journalist from a regional arts magazine found my work at the gallery in Ashland. She wanted to do a profile on the furniture maker in Bandon who used storm debris and barnwood. I agreed to the interview but kept things vague. Talked about craft, about the honesty of working with your hands, about starting over. Never mentioned Portland, the firm, or Natasha. The article ran with photos of my workshop, my house, the coastline where I collected wood after storms. It was a small piece in a small publication. I figured nobody from my old life would ever see it. The morning she found me, I was on the beach at low tide, examining a piece of driftwood that had washed up overnight. Massive thing, twisted by years of ocean current into something that looked almost like a woman reaching upward. I was crouching beside it, running my hand along the grain, when I heard footsteps on the wet sand behind me. I didn't turn around. People walk this beach sometimes. Tourists, birdwatchers, the occasional photographer. The footsteps stopped. Daniel. That voice. 3 years of silence, and it cut through the sound of the waves like it had never been gone. I stood slowly, turned around. Natasha stood 15 feet away, thinner than I remembered. Hair shorter, no color in her cheeks, wearing a plain jacket and jeans instead of the designer pieces she used to favor. She looked like someone who'd been carrying something heavy for a very long time. When our eyes met, her face just crumbled. Not dramatically, not like a movie. More like a wall that had been holding back water for years and finally developed one crack too many. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Her eyes filled. Her shoulders dropped. Everything she'd been holding together, the image, the narrative, the story she'd been telling herself about why she did what she did, all of it collapsed right there on that beach. "Hi," I said. "The way you'd greet someone you used to know in another life." "I found the article," she whispered. "Recognized your work. The joints, the way you finish the edges. Nobody else does it like that." I didn't respond. Just waited. "I came from Vancouver," she said. "Took a bus to Portland, rented a car, drove to Bandon. I've been in town for 2 days trying to figure out if I should come find you or just leave." "And you decided to come," I said. She nodded, wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I needed to see you. To tell you I'm sorry. Not the kind of sorry I put on the internet. The real kind. The kind that keeps me awake at 4 in the morning." I looked at her for a long time. This woman I'd loved for a decade. This woman who'd stood up at our anniversary dinner and detonated everything in front of 43 people while wearing the necklace I'd given her. She was sorry now. 3 years too late, standing on a beach she'd never been to, talking to a man she barely recognized. "Natasha," I said quietly, "I don't need your apology." She blinked. "Please, Daniel. I need you to understand what I was going through. The loneliness, the feeling that I'd lost myself. I understand perfectly," I said. "You were unhappy. You had options. You could have talked to me, could have asked for counseling, could have filed for divorce like an adult. Instead, you chose to announce your affair at our anniversary dinner in front of my mother. That wasn't honesty. That was performance." Her tears came harder. I know that now." "Good," I said. "Then you don't need anything from me." "What about Alex?" She tried. "He misses you." "Alex knows exactly how to reach me," I said. "We talk regularly. He's doing well, no thanks to the chaos you created around him." That landed hard. She flinched like I'd slapped her. "You don't have to be cruel." "I'm not being cruel," I said. "I'm being clear. There's a difference you never learned." She stood there, crying, waiting for something. Forgiveness, maybe. Or rage. Something she could work with, something that proved I still cared enough to feel something about her. But I didn't. The anger had burned out 2 years ago. The sadness a year after that. What was left was just a quiet kind of indifference, the emotional equivalent of an empty room. "Goodbye, Natasha," I said. "I hope Vancouver is good to you." Then I crouched back down beside the driftwood and went back to work. I heard her stand there for another minute, maybe 2. Then her footsteps retreated across the sand, slow at first, then faster, until they were gone. I didn't watch her leave. There was nothing left to see. 8 months later, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I recognized immediately. "I'm 18, Alex wrote. "I graduated early. Can I come visit?" I smiled for the first time in I don't know how long. "Get down here," I typed back. He showed up 3 days later driving a Honda Civic that looked like it had survived a war. Taller than me now, broader in the shoulders, carrying a portfolio case under one arm. He looked around the property, the house, the workshop, the view of the ocean, and just nodded. "This is incredible," he said. "You built all this?" "Most of it," I said. "Had some help." We ate dinner at the diner in town. He ordered a cheeseburger, ate every bite, then sat back and looked at me. "Mom says you were heartless to her on the beach," he said. No judgment in his voice, just reporting. "I wasn't heartless," I said. "I was done." "Big difference." He nodded slowly. "That's what I told her. We spent 4 days together. He helped me in the workshop, showed me his portfolio from school, talked about applying to RISD. The education fund Rachel had set up would cover everything. He knew about it. Rachel had contacted him directly when he turned 18, handed him the details. On his last morning, we stood by his car. He loaded his bag into the trunk, then turned to me. "Why'd you do it?" he asked. "The fund. Everything. You didn't have to." "Because none of this was your fault," I said. "You got caught in something two adults created. The least I could do was make sure it didn't wreck your future." His jaw tightened. "She says you abandoned us." "I abandoned her," I said. "Not you. I've been right here every time you reached out." "I know," he said. "I just needed to hear you say it out loud." He drove away. I stood in the driveway until his car disappeared past the tree line, then went back to the workshop. There was a commission waiting. A dining table for a family in Ashland. 8 seats. Good wood. Honest work. A year later, Rachel sent me a final email. Subject line, closed file. Natasha had remarried in Vancouver. Some tech consultant she'd met through Irina. She'd signed a release waiving any future claims connected to me, the firm, any of it. In exchange, I'd agreed to drop the outstanding legal fees from the divorce proceedings. Clean break. Final. I sat on my porch, coffee in hand, ocean visible through the trees, and read that email 3 times. Natasha, remarried, starting fresh. Part of me hoped she'd actually learn something this time. The bigger part of me realized I genuinely didn't care enough to wonder. I typed back to Rachel. "Thanks for everything. You've been more than an attorney." Her response came within a minute. "That's what happens when your client is someone worth fighting for. Go build something beautiful today." Life found a rhythm after that. Alex visited twice a year, always unannounced, always welcome. He got into RISD, graduated near the top of his class, landed a job at a design firm in Boston. Still quiet. Still perceptive. Still, the kid who'd seen through his mother's performance at 15 and chosen honesty over loyalty to a lie. I met someone. A woman named Claire who ran the bookshop in town. She had paint under her fingernails more often than not and a laugh that could fill a room. We took our time. No rushing. No grand declarations. She knew my history, all of it, and never once treated me like something broken that needed fixing. Claire met Alex during one of his visits. They talked about typography and color theory and whether Rothko was a genius or a con artist while I grilled salmon on the porch. Watching them, I felt something I'd almost forgotten existed. Not happiness exactly. More like alignment. Like every piece of my life had finally found the right slot. That night, after Alex headed to bed and Claire drove home, I sat on the porch steps with a beer and looked up at the stars. Thought about the man I'd been 4 years ago, sitting in that dining room while his wife dismantled his life in front of everyone he knew. Thought about the man I'd become. The one who learned that walking away isn't weakness. It's the hardest kind of strength there is. Natasha got her new beginning. Craig got his kitchen remodels. Dimitri got a custody obligation he never expected. Everyone got something. But I got the thing that mattered most. I got myself back. My phone buzzed. A text from Alex. "Got promoted today. Senior designer. Thought you should know." I typed back. "Proud of you, kid. Always have been." His response was immediate. "Learned from the best." I set the phone down, took a long drink, and looked out at the dark line where the ocean met the sky. Somewhere out there, waves were shaping wood into something new. Grinding away the rough edges, smoothing what didn't belong, revealing what was always underneath. That's what time does, if you let it. It strips away everything that isn't real and leaves you standing with whatever's left. And what was left, I realized, was enough. More than enough. It was mine. And nobody could announce it away at a dinner party. That's not revenge. That's just a man who decided to stop drowning and swim.